So my question to you is, I love childhood stories. So what is your favorite childhood memory?
Oh my gosh, this is so funny you're asking me, because I was just talking about this. So, my dad has always kind of had this persona of, or we, I guess, as a family have built him up to be kind of like the brunt of the family, the kind of like abrasive person. And through my learnings and through educating myself and growing knowledge and all of this, one of the things that I bumped into was the 5 love languages and how everybody shows their love differently, and realized very quickly that my dad shows love through acts of service. So he really doesn't show love any other way except for acts of service. So I'm physical touch, and I'm also words of affirmation. And he sucked at both of those. So I always viewed it as not getting very much love from my dad. However, over the years and learning and educating myself, I was talking just recently to my fiance about, so growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, we didn't celebrate birthdays or celebrate anything really. So my parents once a year held a slumber party for my sister and I, and like we each got to invite an insane amount of other little girls to our house, like 7 each or something. And my dad turned our huge, like 2.5 car garage that was attached to our house into an enormous room, because my mom ran a daycare. So it was like this huge room with like these awesome, beautiful windows he installed and these huge closets. And so anyways, when we had our slumber parties, all the girls would bring over their sleeping bags and blankets and pillows, and we line them all over the floor. And of course, it was super drama filled because it's females. So some of us would be fighting, some of us would be crying, some of us would be gossiping in the corner. It was always all of this, but we loved doing it every year.
So how old were you when it first started, and how old were you when the last time it happened?
Young.
Like 4,
so my
3,
parents,
4?
Yeah, my parents converted. So my parents converted into Jehovah's Witnesses when I was maybe like 3. I think they got baptized. Okay. So I don't remember any holidays. And probably when my sister was born, probably like maybe I was 7, maybe I was 8, and she was probably 5 when we started. And then it went all the way up until probably when I started driving is when we stopped, because once you start driving, you're just never at home anymore. So a good 10 years, probably like 8 to 10 years. Wow. We did it. But anyways, there's this one specific time. So my parents also were really good in the yard, like gardening and bushes and like beautiful landscaping. We always had like the best landscaping in the entire neighborhood, and my parents did it themselves. We're Hispanic, so I guess that kind of comes with it. And so they always set up the backyard so awesome. We had all these games like pin the tail on the donkey and like potato sack racing, and we had piñatas, even though piñatas later in the JW world were not a good thing. We had piñatas. And so the one thing that I was just telling the story about was my dad. Not like the most social person in the entire world, but my dad would help with the games. And one of my favorite things was he would do the piñata up and down. And I remember he would whenever he would swear or say something like not so nice, and he didn't want all of us white folks, because our congregation was all white people. So for those of you that don't know, these slumber parties we had were all Jehovah's Witnesses, because as Jehovah's Witnesses, you only hang out with Jehovah's Witnesses. So whenever he would get like a little frustrated, he's around white people and he's around JWs, he would say his frustration in Spanish. So none of us would understand, including us. We wouldn't understand what he was saying, even his own kids. So I remember a few times where like the little girl almost like hit him or like hit somebody else, and he would say something in Spanish. Probably something like, oh my God, or just something like I'm sure he wasn't like saying the F word or anything, but I remember a few times, and I remember in my head kind of laughing, but also being super grateful that he was there, helping with the string and helping us set up the bat. My mom would put on the little blindfold and turn us around. And sometimes he'd make it really hard for like the girls that were a little taller, and then he'd make it a little easier for girls that were a little smaller. So just kind of showing empathy towards the situation was really cool. And although I didn't quite know the language of what it was at the moment, I distinctively remember feeling like happy. Yeah. But that was huge for me. And I loved those parties. And now looking back at how much work it probably was, my mom spent tons of money on the gifts, like the gift bags and the food, and, setting up all of the games in order so that it wasn't total chaos. Definitely something that was really cool. Because she didn't have to do that.
Wow.
None of the other families did that. My family was the only family that had like that big, like a big thing, a big party for my sister and I both together, which was really cool.
Your parents seem like the dream parents. Gosh,
it was really cool.
Very, very cool. I love that. And what a cool story.
Yeah,
very memorable.
I'm definitely grateful for it now that I've come in contact with, more JWs that aren't necessarily JWs anymore, because I didn't realize how, well, my parents were really strict. Actually, my parents were really strict, but they did do cool things. They did stuff like that. That other JWs didn't necessarily do. So definitely a memory that I cherish a lot. And also just kind of thinking back of like all the drama that went through with it. Like one of the girls always got sent home. One of them always wanted to go home. And then they still did it. Like, even though all of that, my mom would have to pull somebody aside, have a talk with like a couple of us who were being mean or whatever it was, but they still did it.
Did you guys have invitations, like formal invitations that you mailed?
Yes. Yeah.
What? It was like a birthday party, but not a birthday party.
Yeah. We would go to the store, like Walmart or something. And my sister and I would usually, depending on how old we were, I remember as we got older, we wrote them out. But I'm sure when we were younger, my parents wrote them out. But we would have to actually write them out in our crappy handwriting and mail them. Like little ones from Walmart, like you are invited to, and have like little balloons on it or something.
Of course.
Yeah. It was really cool.
I love it.
Yeah. It kind of like took the play. And that was kind of how my parents made me feel better, or made us feel better as far as not celebrating the holidays. We knew that we didn't do birthdays, we didn't do Christmas, but every year we would be able to have a slumber party. And that was always really cool. So awesome. Kind of how and a lot of it is probably because they grew up in the world. So if you think about it, they probably to some point missed the holidays.
Oh, for sure.